Before we jump into this video, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all these human beings for all this joyful goodness. Thank you so much. You guys are so generous in the way you support me, and I pretty much want to have all your babies. You got me all this good stuff and more, so I just wanted to do a quick thank you before we jumped into the video. Rapey, cancer, retard Nazis, I don't see why not. I wonder if anyone said those words together before. You never know. Could be an internet first. My question to you is, do any of those words offend you? And as a matter of fact, I actually popped that question out on Twitter. I thought I'd ask the internet. I'm pretty sure I got everyone. I think I got the entire internet, so that's always good to know. I threw in no homo as well, but actually that one's a little bit different, and I'll discuss why that's different in just a second. Most people said it depends on context. Again, we'll dive deep into that in just a second. A huge amount of you just said no, like as in never. There is no way I will ever be offended by the word rape, which was surprising. Next was sometimes, and a small portion of you, but still a very surprising amount, said yes, they just offend me. Full stop. Like, yes and no surprised me just as much in a way. But anyway, let's just introduce this topic a little bit. As we know, a lot of these words are just flung about. They're used in common parlance, which I believe is the correct term, in everyday conversation. Here's a couple of quick comments I found on my channel. Blah 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 blah. I hate it when your team is basically raped to pieces by the enemy. And another one, you retard, how the F is soldier hard to master. Very constructive feedback there, thank you very much. So how do these words come about in the first place? Obviously there has to be that moment where someone kind of uses it for the first time. And in that moment, it has a very high impact and it's very edgy. Someone once made a potentially comical comparison between something they don't like and the horrific disease that is cancer. And in that moment, I imagine that got quite a kind of reaction. It was like, wow, I've never heard that been phrased like that before. That has some impact. It's kind of comical, it's like original. And then from there, I guess in the same way a meme grows, people sort of start to use it and it spreads. Before you know it, it's just kind of common internet language. But it's a shame that this happens really, because there's a big difference between using it as a one-off considered joke versus using it in common parlance. That's kind of one of the cruxes of, the central point of my argument in this video. It's kind of twofold. It's partly context, but it's also, if you're using it as a one-off, as a very considered joke, or using one of these as every other word. Oh, that book, that's cancer. Oh, that TV show, cancer. Oh, that's annoying, that bit of food on my plate, cancer. Everything's cancer. And then you can see, by doing that, you start to become kind of desensitized to the word, right? It starts to lose its meaning or its value. And I think in some cases, it's important for some words to have meaning and value. Because in this case here, for example, with the word cancer, it's a big horrific thing, we're just stealing that meaning from it and using it for our own thing. It's very similar to just using any old swear word over and over again, and I've talked about this before, but if you're saying F this, F that all the way through a video, it just loses all meaning and all impact, and it becomes pointless. Now I need to be careful here because I'm a bit of a hypocrite, and I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, but what I've just been through is kind of, like I said, the crux of my argument. I really like borderline offensive humour, stuff that's kind of, on the edge of acceptable, but I wouldn't use that kind of humour, or at least I'd use it very carefully in one of my videos when I don't know exactly who's going to be watching. When I'm with one of my good friends, the stuff we say, it is dreadful, it's horrific, if anyone overheard us, but we know we're joking, we know we're both kind of good people. I have an understanding that you don't have to explain everything you're saying. So sometimes we're like really crass or ignorant or offensive on purpose. And personally, I think that's fine. If you know literally what your audience is and it's just your mate and you have that understanding and you know neither of you really mean the things you're saying and it's almost about joking at the idea of someone actually meaning that or the idea of someone being that ignorant, I think in that case it's okay. A good example of this for me is the word rape. So it's one of those words that's just, is horrible, and I wouldn't go around, in one of my videos just using it the whole time. But for some reason, when you add a Y at the end and turn it into rapey, it just tickles me. I think it's because it has such horrific meaning and you're immediately just sort of softening it and making it jokey by saying rapey, like that's a little bit rapey, so casually that it becomes, for me, funny. But again, I'm still very reserved in how I use it publicly, because I just think, you know what, it may be uncomfortable for someone. It may be offensive, we don't know. Going back to my survey, 7% of the people will be offended by that word. Another 5 or 10 or whatever it was may be offended sometimes. So I would never say you cannot use these words, because, that's just ridiculous. But it's just about being careful and kind of considerate when you're using these kind of words. But I think the biggest sin is, and I've already covered this, is just using it constantly and just sucking out all meaning of a word. If someone says, oh, that's so retarded, it's like you almost don't hear it anymore. The original word retard is kind of antiquated anyway, so maybe that doesn't quite make sense. But yeah, cancer, you can kind of start to see it losing its meaning, and I just don't think that's a great thing. Although, you could say, is it okay for it to have two meanings? I don't know. The meaning, it's not like it's a word that has two completely separate meanings. The new meaning is borrowing from the old one. I don't know. I'm confusing myself now. I said earlier about no homo and how that's different. All the other words are words that have been reused, but no homo is kind of a brand new phrase. I believe it was made up in the world of rap music, folks. Now I'm kind of interested to know specifically about that one, if people find it offensive, because for me, I know it's a bit of a meme, it's almost like, it's a bit of a joke now, right? You say no homo after everything basically at this point, so it becomes a bit of a joke and that's fine, but if you unironically say no homo, what I think's not quite right there is the fact that you're super keen to disassociate yourself with being gay, if you see what I mean. So I can see how that one might be offensive, but yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, as always. But yeah, if I just quickly go through this list of 5 words that I've been using a lot throughout this video and talk a bit about if and how I use them. So rape, like I said, I wouldn't use that publicly, but with my friend, for some reason, that tickles me, but I'm very careful with how I use it. Cancer, I've just never used it. I don't know, maybe I've gotten too old or something, but the moment I saw people using it, it seemed really weird to me. It seemed bizarre. I've done a sketch on this before. I don't want to come across as a super old person or an SJW. That's not my intention at all, but it just seems a bit wrong, that one. It's like I said before, 1 in 3 of us are going to get messed up by this disease. It's pretty horrific. It feels wrong to kind of hijack its meaning and desensitize ourselves to it. Retard, I don't know. The thing about that one is, I use the word spaz a lot. It seems really harmless. But if you look into it, that probably came from the word spastic, and that seems pretty wrong to say that. In general, it's funny because language does change constantly, and what's offensive now may not be offensive in 10, 20 years, and vice versa. Maybe the word spaz in 10 years is going to be horrifically offensive, and maybe the word retard, you'll hear people using it in office meetings. Who knows? It's just crazy how language changes. Now, Nazi is a really interesting one that I wanted to just focus on for a second because, weirdly, this one I don't find offensive at all, and it's one of the words out of this list that I'm perfectly fine using, but I'm probably in the wrong here. My thinking is, right, all the other words could somehow remind you of something or be somehow connected to your life, even if it's a distant connection, and therefore bring up horrific memories or bad feelings. But Nazi, for us, who are very privileged to have not had to witness the war or anything like that. Now, the way I would use it is call someone a Nazi if they're being, it's like calling someone a douchebag. If you're an actual Nazi, then sure, you might be offended, but I have no problem with offending actual Nazis. But I think I'm actually kind of in the wrong here. All it takes is one viewer who has their granddad who was in the war, who, has a big connection to that word. They could be offended by it. And I've even had people in my streams who are like German or watching my videos and have kind of said, have kind of cringed a bit when I've used the word, which is a little bit eye-opening for me. Anyway, I think this is a very interesting topic. I don't want to be some kind of SJW blokey. I don't want to get involved in that debate. I'll tell you what though, both sides of that argument are mentalists. I've noticed people on the internet, SJ warriors versus anti-SJ warriors, who are equally as warriory as the SJ warriors, battling it out, hating each other's guts. I'm good, thanks. I'll leave them to it. But yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about recently. My conclusion would be, it is about context. It is about the company you're with. It is about obviously the intent and the target of the joke. It goes without saying. Obviously you don't want to be hateful with your jokes. And it's also finally about just not overusing these words. And I guess it's especially important for me as a content creator to just be super considerate, saying cancer. I've never liked the word, but if I wanted to use that, who's listening? Who's just lost someone horrifically to this disease and doesn't want to particularly be reminded of it? It just seems like a douchey move. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Another big thank you to those who gave me lots of juicy presents recently. And an extra special thank you to So Lonely for his Patreon pledge, Lily for their Patreon pledge, and Nevo who recently showered me with donations in Twitch. Really appreciate all your support. Follow me on Twitter, because that's always a good thing to do. Join my Discord. Watch me on Twitch. And I think that's pretty much all the things you have to do immediately. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Join my Discord. Join my Discord. Nope. Join my Discord. Join my Discord. Nope. Join my Discord. Join my Discord. Join my Discord. Join my Discord. Nope. Yes.